Everybody, this is Barry for Knitting for Love. In today's video, we're going to make socks, and the socks I'm making are anklet socks. And as you can tell, this is the same yarn that I used to make the furry trimmed hat. At the request, someone wants socks made out of the same yarn, so I'm making anklet socks. And what you'll need is some yarn of your choice, a pair of knitting needles, measuring tape, tapestry needle, and sewing needles. Now I'm making these ankle down. I'm not going to make them toe up. I will have another video on how to make toe up in a later date, but these are going to be ankle, which is starting at the ankle and working my way down to the toe. So let's get started. Every person's foot is different. I find 40 stitch cast on fits a range between size 7 and size 9, 10 shoe. So 40 of the cast on stitches. And I'm going to be ribbing this. So I'm going to be doing a knit one, purl one. Trying to find my end here. Now when this is going to be knitting in the round, so there will be no seams. People hate seams in their socks. So how I'm going to cast on 40 stitches is that I'm going to take my yarn, and I'm doing a long tail cast on because it is stretchier than any other. And I'm just going to pull enough out here, and I'm going to cast on 40 stitches because I know that that will fit her ankle. It also fits my ankle, and I'm a shoe size 8 and I have very thin ankles. So as you can tell, I'm doing my long tail cast on. And I will return when I have all my 40 stitches casted on. Okay, so I have my 40 stitches casted on one needle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide that 40 stitches amongst 3 needles and form a triangle. I'll be back when I've done this. And the way you do this is you just take some stitches and slip them off onto another needle, like so. And I am using worsted weight yarn, and these are a size 4 double pointed knitting needles. So as you can tell, you just slip them off. So when I've got them all slipped into position, I will be right back. Okay, so now I've got my 40 stitches separated amongst my needles, and I've got them formed as a triangle. Now, as you can see, I got my bottom of my stitches all around the inside. Now that is a must when you're knitting it around, because if they're not, your work is going to be twisted and you're going to wonder why your knitting is not going in the right place and half of your work is going up instead of down. Is because you don't have it's twisted. So make sure that all of your rim, the bottom of your stitches, is all facing the middle, and I've put it in a form of a triangle. Now here's my tail, and this is my working yarn. I'm going to take my working yarn, and my working yarn is in the middle, and that's where it should stay depending on what you're working with. Now for me, I'm going to do this as a 1x1 rib. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick them up, and I'm going to hold these needles, especially these two, across from each other because I want to knit, but I can't because, yes, I do have it in reverse. So let's just make sure that we form this correctly for you. There we go. Now we're working. Now I gotta rearrange my little stitches in the middle. That's the tail. All my stitches are on the outside. And this is the needle. This is the needle I want to work from next because this is the very first stitch that I casted on. And that's the very last stitch I casted on. So I want to make sure those two are together. So I'm going to hold these two together, and I'm going to knit the first stitch. And when knitting with double point needles, the very first stitch, I want this in the middle. So my yarn is a little tangled here. So I'm going to knit the first stitch, and I'm going to pull it through. But I want to make sure this stitch is tight, so I'm going to tighten it. And then I'm going to, as you would normally do a 1 by 1 rib, you'd bring the knitting forward. And now you can begin your knitting, as always. And what I'm going to do with this pattern is I'm going to knit 3 inches of 1 by 1 rib. And when you get done with that, then we'll meet again. I'm just going to finish this row to show you what you need to do with the next row, with the, not this row, but the first needle. And the way I divided it was 13, 13, and 14, which gives you a total of 40 stitches. So I have 1 needle with an extra stitch, which is not a big deal. And I will show you that once you knit off 1 needle, you'll have a free needle to pick up again and knit on the next needle. And you just keep switching needles. As you can tell, I'm knitting with this laying down. If you're a beginner, please knit with it laying down so you don't have to worry about the other needles falling out, or use some bamboo needles. Don't use metal knitting needles if you're beginning with this, because the yarn is slippery and will fall off your needles. So in this case, my last stitch on this needle is a knit stitch. And there. So I want to make sure that, again, I'm not twisting this. So these are all on the outside. They're still facing the same way. I'm going to take that needle and put this needle that I'm working with on top of the 2 side needles. And you also want to make sure that you reposition your work in the middle of the needles. That way you don't have it at the end, like so, and slip off. So always make sure that you pull that out some and then start knitting from this needle. And if it's a purl stitch, you bring it forward. If it's a knit stitch, you bring it backwards. But you always make sure that this stitch, you pull it a little bit, because you don't want a run down the center of your sock. And it's easy to fix, and I can show you how to fix that. But if that does happen, this is how to prevent that. So see you in 3 inches of 1 by 1 ribbing. Hello, it's Barry. Well, I'm back again, and I've knitted the cuff of my ankle sock, which is 3 inches in length. And now I'm going to have to work on the heel. And what I like to do with the heel is I like to take one of my needles, and I am at the beginning of the row. There's my tail. So this is the needle beginning my row. Is I'll take this one needle right here, and I will work back and forth for about 10 to 12 rows, depending on the length of your heel from the ankle itself. It's usually about 10 rows, 15 rows, but you need to measure your foot from the ankle to the bottom of the heel point, and then do the math between the two. So if I do 10 rows, we'll meet you back then. Later. Okay, everybody, I'm back, and I finished the back of my heel. And this is 18 rows from the ankle to the heel. Now I'm going to do the turning of the heel, which I want to leave 5 stitches here and 5 stitches over here. So I'm going to actually knit across to 10, turn, work my row. And this stitch is still done in the same pattern as your stockinette. And let's see, I'm just gonna do this. We got a few more. Okay, so now we're at 5 stitches. Now I'm going to leave these 5 here. And I'm going to turn my work around. And now I'm going to purl back in the other direction. Leaving 5 stitches on that side. That's 5 stitches, yes. So now I'm going to turn my work again, back around to the front. My camera is way too low, so let's make an adjustment here. That way I can turn this easily. So now I let 5 here. You can see that little gap right there. Now I'm going to knit and leave 4. So I'm going to knit back and I'm going to pick up the 4th one. And I'm going to pick this one up and knit it. And then I'm going to turn. Now some people like the wrap and turn. I personally don't care, but yes, you can do it. Wrap and turn is where you slip one, take it off. It actually does close up the little hole if you do it that way. I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to purl all the way across until I have knitted the 4th stitch away from the end. And there it is. And then I'm going to wrap this one and turn also. I'm going to slip this one back on here. Okay, so this is going to be a lot of back and forth until you finish picking up all of the stitches across. So now I'm going to pick up until I leave 3. One. Now I'm going to pick this 3rd one up, and then I'm going to wrap and turn. So wrapping and turn is you're going to bring the yarn to the front of your work. That's the purl. Slip that next stitch, pull the yarn back around, and then slip that stitch back onto that hook. So we have 2 left. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side. I am going to be dropping stitches here. There, I picked them all back up. Close one. And just going to keep on going. Picked up that 3rd one. There's the 3rd one. And then we're going to wrap. So we're going to bring it behind. I'm going to slip that next stitch, bring it around again, and slip the stitch back. Keep hitting that there. So now we're going to knit until we have 1, if I can stop being tangled. And that's one of the problems with working with double pointed needles. You can become very tangled very quickly. And there. We're going to knit until we get to 2. Now we're at our 2, so we're going to knit this 1. And we're going to wrap, pick it up, wrap it back around, put it back on our needles. And then we're going to turn. As you see, the wrap and turn method, what happens is when you're knitting, you're actually, when you pull that thread, you pull the 2 stitches closer together, which leaves no hole. And I'm tangled again. And then we're going to knit back. Well, purl back, because this is the purl side. And this is the bottom of the heel. Okay. There. And this is the last one, so we're going to wrap and turn this one. I'm going to slip that back on. And try not to split your stitches. There. As you can tell, the little heel is forming. It's a little edge, little bump there, as you can tell. So that's what it should look like. Should look like a little U right here. And then this is the last. This time you're not going to wrap and turn. You're going to knit all the way across. And there will be, that was the last row of wrap and turn. And you knit this one. And what I do is I kind of split a stitch there on the side. I'll pick that up later. And I'm going to turn it. And then I'm going to purl all the way across. And that will be the turning of the heel. And then we can go into the next step, which is picking up stitches along the heel. And then I will show you how many I pick up. And there, that is your final stitch, and that's your wrap and turn and turning of the heel. So you can actually see it's starting to resemble a sock. There's your heel. It's a good heel. Now, next we're going to pick up stitches along this edge. And how many I pick up is based on how many rows I've actually knitted from here to here. So I've knitted from here to here before I started turning is 18. So if I think about it, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got 22 stitches to pick up along this side. Knit across here, knit across here, pick up 22 stitches across this side, and meet you back later. Okay, so we're back, and I've picked up all my stitches on this side, and I put little stitch markers here, and you can tell because that's the first stitch, so I put it right between that stitch and the pickup stitch. And we're going to decrease, doing knit 2 together on this side of the stitch markers on both sides. So we're decreasing 2 stitches every round, and we are going to finish when we have no more stitches left inside of here. You do not decrease this. This is the back of your foot, or these. So when you got back the starting number of stitches that you had, I have 40, so I will see you back when I have 40 again. Bye now. Hi everybody. So we're back, and I'm back down to 40 stitches around where I began. Now I'm just going to keep knitting in the round. As you can see, our heel is here and our cuff is looking good, and so depending on the size of the foot, you may want to try it on, and you can try it on as long as you have long, deep, double pointed needles. If you have those little short ones, I suggest, if you wanted to try it on, to actually make sure it fits. You can take all of this off the needles by using a safety thread around, and that way you can not drop any stitches and it will stretch. But the long needles, these long needles, you can actually try the whole sock on all the way through your whole process, just to make sure you have a length on it. So for me, my foot personally, I would go 3 more inches before I start the toe. But because I'm doing this for a person whose foot size is actually a lot larger than mine, I'm going to go 5 more inches to fit a size 9.5, 10. So this is for a bigger person's foot than mine. So I'm going to knit 5 more inches straight up, and then I will be back to show you how to start your decreasing for the toe. Later. Okay everybody, welcome back, and I have finished the length of my foot and I'm ready to start decreasing for my toes. So basically what you're going to do for the decreasing of your toes is, it depends on how or where you want to sew your sock up. If you want a seam that goes from this way to this way, you're going to divide your stitches in half this way. I like mine to go across the toe so there's no seam across between the toes. That's kind of strange. So what you have to do is you have to make sure that your stitches are separated evenly. So basically you're going to need 20 stitches on each. Since I have 20 on mine, I'm going to need 20 stitches on each. Now I have I have 13 stitches on my bottom needle. So basically what I want to do is slip some of these stitches off of these needles. So I'm going to slip 3 off of this one. Or I can slip 3 off of the back, since I didn't knit that round yet. Since I'm at the beginning of the row, I want to keep that at the beginning of the row. So I'm going to slip 3 stitches off of this needle to make that 20. And I'm going to put them onto this needle. So now I have 20 stitches across my bottom. And now 20 stitches across here. So let's see, we can manage to make this. Okay, so I've got my, how many did I say? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Oh, I need 4 more stitches. So I need a total of 20 on the bottom. So I'm just moving my stitches from one needle to the next to create 20 on the bottom, 20 on top. And there. Now I have have 20 across my bottom. And now I'm going to make sure I have 10 and 10. So I need to pull 3 stitches from here to here. There. Yep, so I have 10 on this needle, 10 on this needle, and 20 on this needle. So this is going to be how our foot is going to start decreasing. And as you can tell, it's the bottom. Here's the bottom of the heel. And it's flat. And you can lay it down just to make sure that you are kind of flat in the middle. So what you're going to do to decrease for the heel is you're going to decrease 2 stitches on each side. So you're going to do 1 on 1 here, 1 on 1 here. So you're going to decrease, you're going to knit 2 together here, knit 2 together here, knit 2, knit 2. So you're going to start decreasing 4 stitches every row. And when you're left 4 stitches every row, you should be left with about 10 stitches. I would say decrease until you have 10 stitches total around until you're finished. And I will meet you back when you have a total of 10 stitches around. Okay, everyone, we're back. And as you can tell, we have finished all of our sock. And we need to close the toes up. So I have 10 stitches left. And I've divided them amongst the 2 needles. So that way you have stitches on both, 5 and 5 on both top and bottom needles. And you're going to need a pair of scissors. We're just going to snip a little here and a tapestry needle. And the way I like to close up my socks, sometimes I use a Kitchener stitch, sometimes I use a whip stitch. It's all on preference. So today I'm just going to use a whip stitch. So as you can tell, so I'm going to hold both needles in one hand. I've got my tapestry needle loaded, and what I like to do is I like to go into this stitch as to knit, and then go into this one as to purl, and I like to pull both of them off. Now you can pull them off as you go, but I'm going to go in here as to knit. And I can pull it off like that and then pull my yarn through. Just make sure that you don't become tangled in the corner, as that happens. And then I'm going to come in here as the purl. So I'm going to take that stitch off. And then I'm going to position my yarn. And I'm going to do this as the knit, pull it off, pull, and then do this one as the purl, pull that one off, and do this one as to knit, and pull that off. Let's see if I can get my needle in here. That's to purl. And then my last one is to knit. And let it drop off. And this one to purl. Let it drop off. Now, as you can see, I have a nice little closure. But if I go like this, it actually pulls everything closed in a nice little corner fashion. So what I'm going to do now to actually close off my sock, so I'm going to go in, open this up a little here. I'll stick my hand in there so I can grab my needle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this last stitch. Now you see how that stitch is sitting upright? I'm going to take that stitch and I'm going to go all the way over to my first stitch. And I'm just going to bring it around and up and hopefully get it back through that one stitch. I can do this easier this way. And that locks that stitch. And as you can tell, it's gone now. No more stitch hanging out. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go in the middle, grab my yarn, my needle on that side, pull it through. And now I'm going to reverse my sock inside and out so I can do this sewing part. And this I'm going to use with my hand in there so I can see what I'm doing, see all the stitches. Okay, so as you can tell, there's no seam here. So nothing to feel on the foot, nothing to feel on your toes. That's always a great thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start weaving in and out. I probably need a smaller needle than what I'm using. This needle is definitely smaller, but as you can tell, it still has a very big eye to it. It's also a lot sharper. It's harder to thread. You need to get one of those needle threaders. Pinch my yarn together and see if I can stick that through there and see if I can grab it. Well, not quite. I'll just work with the bigger one. This is going to be a little bit more difficult to thread that one. I'm going to have to go buy a needle threader to make this easier. But let's close up our socks. So we're going to hide these stitches, hide our loose ends, and I'm just going to weave in and out of one of the top threads here so it won't be visible. I'm just picking up one stitch at a time and I'm weaving in and out. So now I'm going to go over here. And you can basically weave in and out anywhere you want. Just give yourself enough thread. And this helps because your work, if a thread does come undone, it's not going to unravel your sock. It's got a long ways to travel before it can do that. So I'm going to just end it right here. And I'm going to take this, make a little knot. Pull it. And I don't cut it all the way to the end because that little part there will felt in the dryer or wash machine, and you will have a nice little closed sock. Now I'm going to weave in the other ends in the same manner, but except throughout the rib. I'm going to weave this end all the way down the rib. Now, as you can see, there is a difference between your cast on, and basically I just try to close up that difference. See how there's a big gap right here, but there's no big gaps anywhere else. That's because that's my beginning of my row. So basically I'm going to take this needle and I'm going to stick it in like that, and that closes up that gap and makes everything look the way it's supposed to look. And I'm going to come back through. So now you can't tell where you began or you ended. And I'm going to weave this in and out of the rib, and as you can tell, I'm actually going behind 2 stitches and just going in and out. And this does not appear, even though I'm in the I have purple thread here, this does not appear on that side. So you don't have to worry about, colors showing up on the other side when doing this, because there's actual yarn underneath this. I'm just picking up the stitches that are sitting on top. So your work does not show through it. So you can actually, what I like to do is I like to weave this all the way down until I'm finished. Now I'm finished. So what I'm going to do now is take this. I'm going to tie a knot here because that's not coming out anywhere anytime soon. But if you pull too tight, you could draw this up. So don't pull too tight when making that knot. That's why I'm going like this after the fact. And so you can see that it's not really that visible. And my knot is really good and tight. And that's it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this step-by-step on a top-down sock tutorial. And please like and subscribe. And you see how nice and round that sock tip is? So that's a pair of socks that is now going to be a gift for someone. And that's the same yarn. A couple times we tried on the other one, so I didn't need to try on this one. So it's quite not stretched and set and blocked like the other one is. So time for that. Happy knitting. Please like, share, subscribe, and let me know what you think. Happy knitting and Happy New Year.